So we had this joke this morning that I was going to say, you can be dismissed from the keyboard, but I won't do that. But you dismissed yourself. It's awesome. That's awesome. I was hoping to have background music the whole way through. So, like he had keys through the sermon. It was cool. Well, last time we met was 2 weeks ago. Last time I met with you, I was here with you. And I want to recap just some things that I told you over the 3 weeks I've been able to be with you while Dorsey's been on sabbatical. And the first thing we talked about was being gathered up, and that God gathers us for a purpose. And the purpose for which God has gathered us is so that we can become the body of Christ, first and foremost, so that we can become the body and blood of Christ out there in the world, right? The second thing that God gathers us for is to help make the kingdom present in the world. Because if you're the body of Christ, then that means, as Jesus said, that the kingdom of God resides inside of you, inside of your heart. So wherever you go, the kingdom goes with you. And if that's true, then you've been gathered up to become a transforming presence in the world. This is why God has called you to himself, to experience his goodness, to experience his grace, to experience his power, to experience all of the blessing that God has, but then to do something else, and that is to scatter. God gathers us up and gives us these gifts and then sends us back out into the world. And we're scattered. We're scattered so that we can tell others about the goodness of God, about the grace of God, about how we've experienced God and what God has done in our hearts and in our lives. This is what God does again and again and again in the Scriptures. We see it in the Old Testament. We see it in the New Testament. God gathers his people up and sends them out. Jesus gathers his disciples up. He sends them out. He gathers them back up and he sends them out again. It's all through the Scriptures, this gathering and scattering. And if you remember where we left off 2 weeks ago, Jesus and the disciples were on the mountaintop. And Jesus was transfigured there, and the disciples saw him glowing with white, dazzling with white clothes, and talking to Moses and Elijah. And Peter was like, this is it, let's just stay here. But Jesus says, no, the mission is not the mountaintop. We've got to go. And so this morning's sermon picks up right where the sermon from 2 weeks ago left off. This is what happened when Jesus went down with his disciples from the mountain. And it's in Mark chapter 9, verses 14 to 29. And we're going to kind of walk through this text together as Jesus and his closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, are coming down from the mountain. Take a look there with me. It says, when they came to the disciples, that is, the disciples who were down in the valley. So they had been up the mountain. They come down the mountain into the valley. When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them, and some scribes arguing with them. So they come off of the mountain, this incredible experience of God moving with power, and they come back down into the valley, and before they can even get into town, they see that there's this ruckus going on. These people are arguing back and forth, and it's the disciples and the scribes, and you can see that they're bickering with one another. And then it says, when the whole crowd saw him, that's Jesus, they were immediately, overcome with awe, and they ran forward to greet him. So not only is there this craziness happening down in the town, but then Jesus shows up with Peter, James, and John. Everybody goes, whoa, it's Jesus. And they take a pause, and they go running toward him. And he asks them, what are you arguing about with them? That's the scribes. What are you arguing about with these scribes, these lawyers, these Pharisees? What are you arguing about with them? And he asked, someone from the crowd answered him, verse 17, Teacher, I brought you my son. Now, if you're following along, just underline that or circle it. I brought you my son. Teacher, I brought you my son. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak, and whenever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they could not do so. Jesus answered them, you faithless generation, how much longer must I be among you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him to me. So Jesus, he's come back down off the mountaintop, and like I said, there's a ruckus going on in the city, and Jesus arrives, and everybody turns, his disciples at least, the crowd that's gathered, turn and look at him, and Jesus says, what are you doing here? And from the back of the crowd, a man says, listen, Jesus, I brought you my son, and your disciples have been trying to heal him. Now, can you imagine what that moment must have been like, when this son who has a child who he can't help? Have you ever been a helpless parent? I mean, it's Father's Day, so some of his dads have been helpless parents. And when you can't do anything for your child, you'll go anywhere, you'll do anything to make your child better. That's where this father is in this story. He will do anything to see his child delivered from this demon. So he hears that Jesus and his disciples are coming to town, so he takes his boy, he takes his child, and carries his child to his disciples. And so they start praying. And I can imagine they start laying on hands, and maybe they start speaking in tongues, and they keep doing this, and nothing is happening. Nothing's happening. They have all the faith that they can muster, and nothing is happening. This child is still powerless and still wrapped up by this demon. And the disciples, they're powerless in the situation. They can't do what needs to be done. And I think that's because what needs to be done here doesn't just have to do with this child whose life is in danger, but it also has to do with a father whose heart was broken and needed to be healed as well. That I can understand. When Addie, my oldest daughter, was 18 months old, we took a trip to Savannah to see my parents. And actually, no, we went to Waycross to see her parents. And while we were in Waycross, Addie got a bug bite on her leg. It's like right here on the front of her leg. And kids get bug bites, right? Like, she was outside in Waycross. It's the swamp. There's mosquitoes. You're going to get bit by bugs. But this bug bite, I turned around and looked at her on the ride back, and it was red, and it looked kind of funny. You ever see something, if you've had children, you see a bite or a mark on your child, and you're like, that's weird, you know? It was one of those moments for us. It was like, that's just a weird bite. And so we kept watching it, and as we made our way back on that 5-hour trip to Columbus, Addie's leg just kept swelling. And that little tiny bug bite became a great big whelp and became this great big red mark. And so we were like, we've got to do something for this child. And it was late at night, so we carried her to the pediatric immediate care at Columbus Regional. And they said, oh, it's just a spider bite. And I'm like, it's not just a spider bite. Look at that thing. Like, that's, that looks like a big deal to me. And they're like, it'll be fine. Take her home. Give her a bath. In the morning, everything should be different. So we go home and we give her a bath, and she's our only child. She's 18 months old. She's powerless. She can't tell us much of what's going on, and so we're trying to wash the leg, and that thing is hot and it's red, and so we finally get her calmed down with some Tylenol. She goes to sleep, and we wake up in the morning to a child whose leg looked like it had been boiled. I mean, it was red, and it was hot. And she was running a fever. And so we thought, oh my gosh, this is a huge deal. So we snatch her up and we carry her to the doctor's office. And the doctor tells us, your child has a staph infection. It looks like it's MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. There you go. That's MRSA for you. That was a lot. You can look it up later. MRSA is the way you hear it spoken about in the news. And he's like, she has to go on some high-powered antibiotics right now. And she's going to have surgery on her leg. And that, I was just done in at that point. And we were like, okay, whatever we got to do. She needs to be healed. She needs to be well. Here, take our child. He's like, no, I'm not going to take your child. You go to the hospital. And so we went straight to the hospital, and like 4 hours later, our child is back, and she's healed, and she's well. And I wish I could tell you that was the end of our story with MRSA, but it's not. Because for some reason, Addie was prone to getting these infections. And so for the next 2 years, it was like every 6 months, Addie had another infection that was causing her incredible pain. It was causing this massive infection. She was having to go on these super high-powered antibiotics, and nobody had an answer. And I can remember sitting at a doctor's office here in town and them saying, there's really nothing that we can do for you here. Here's some more medicine, and maybe this will help. And all I could think was, I've got to do more than maybe this will help for my child. So I loaded Addie up in the car, and we drove. And I can remember sitting in the office of an immunologist, or I think that's what she was. She dealt with bites and infectious disease. She's an infectious disease doctor. Infectious disease doctor's office, sitting there, holding my daughter, who is crying from the pain that's in her body and the infection that's in her body, and me feeling like I am utterly helpless. And then the nurse is telling me, hey, guess what? We can't get you in today. I was like, no, you're going to see my child. Like, your doctor will not get to leave this office without seeing this little girl, because I can't do anything. I don't know what else we can do. I can relate to a dad who feels like he's at his wit's end. Who feels like he'd do anything to save his child, and that's where this dad is. He's willing to do anything to save his boy. He's willing to do anything to see his son healed, and so he's brought his son to Jesus' disciples. And what I want to suggest to you this morning is this, that I believe that we do just what this Father does all the time. We believe that by bringing our hurts and our pains, our sorrows, all the brokenness in our lives, I believe sometimes that by bringing it here to this place, that somehow miraculously all of those hurts and all those pains and all those fears are going to take care of themselves. So we'll take our hurt and our pain and all of our emotional stuff and physical stuff and financial stuff. We'll carry all of that stuff to church with us, and we'll talk to the people that sit around us about all this stuff that we're dealing with in our life. Or maybe you'll go to your small group and you'll talk to those people in your small group about all the stuff that's going on in your life, and you end up being just like this man who brings his child to Jesus' disciples instead of bringing the child to Jesus, because there's a difference. You know this, right? Like, there's a difference between bringing the stuff that's going on in your life to the people of God, which is a wonderful thing. Don't get me wrong. You need to be sharing your burdens with the people around you, the people who are following after Christ with you. But first and foremost, you need to bring that stuff to God, because He's the one with the power. He's the one with the prescription. He's the one that can bring the healing. He's the one that can bring the restoration. You don't need another small group meeting. You need to bring your stuff to the foot of the cross, because that's where the power is. Bringing His Son to the disciples isn't the same thing as bringing Him to Jesus. Stephen Furtick talks about this. He says, we think that we've prayed about the stuff that's going on in our life when all we've really done is thought about it a lot. Anybody do that? Like you think you've prayed about something, but really all you've done is obsessed about it. It's eating you up on the inside, and you're a nervous wreck, and you're stressed out about it, and you're thinking, I've been praying about this, but you haven't been praying. You haven't been bringing it to the Father. You've just been storing it up on the inside, holding it inside, thinking that if I just obsess on this enough, that somehow magically, or if I tell enough people about this, that somehow magically it's going to get better. When what you ought to be doing is bringing all of that stuff to the one who has real healing, and who has real power, and who has the prescription for the infection and the disease and the hurt that's inside of you. Jump back into the text. It says, and they brought the boy to him in verse 20. And when the Spirit saw him, that's Jesus, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the father, how long has this been happening to him? And he said to him, from childhood. This horrific stuff has been happening to my child since childhood. It's often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. Can you imagine how desperate this father must be? Then he says to Jesus, but if you're able to do anything, have pity on us and help us. The father says, if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. This father was begging for anything. Anything you can do, Jesus. Even if it's just temporary healing, even if it's just to make it stop right now, anything, I'll take anything if you'll just give me that. And that's often where we live, in this place of desperation where we're willing to take anything to make the pain and the hurt stop in our lives. We're willing to fill ourselves with all sorts of things that we think will make us better. Whether it's alcohol or drugs or another relationship or whatever it is you chase after in your free time. We think that by filling ourselves up with this stuff that somehow it'll make all the pain and all the hurt go away, because all we really want is a little bit of relief. Well, what I want to tell you is that Jesus isn't concerned with your relief. Jesus is concerned with your redemption and your restoration. He doesn't want to be like 2 Tylenol pills that you take to make the pain go away for 4 hours. What God desires is to fix you from the inside out, not only for today or for the next 5 minutes or 4 hours, but for the rest of your life. Jesus wants to work in you redemption so that you can be brought back to life. The answer to your problems, to your hurts, to your pain, to your suffering, the answer to all of it isn't anything. It's Jesus. It's a very specific something, a very specific someone. So Jesus says to him, and I love this. I mean, you never think about Jesus being kind of snarky, but occasionally Jesus is snarky in the Bible. And he is right here. So this is verse 23. Jesus says back to him, if you're able, do you know who I am? I mean, I'm sure this is what Jesus is processing. He's like, hold on just a second. Do you know who I am? If you're able. If you're able, I'm able. I was there at the foundation of the world. I was there as the sun and the moon and the stars were being set into place. If I'm able to bring healing, of course I'm able to bring healing. All things can be done, Jesus says, for the one who believes. All things can be done for those who believes. And immediately the father of the child cries out, I believe. Help my unbelief. I believe. Help my unbelief. He realizes, this father, that he's thought a lot about his child's situation. He's thought a lot about what he could do to make this child better. But he hasn't done the one thing that he has to do for the child to receive the healing that he needs. He hasn't brought to Jesus. He hasn't brought him to Jesus' feet. And I think we do the same thing. When, instead of crying out, God, fix this, we ought to be saying, God, I believe, help me to believe more. Help my unbelief. See, the issue is not just a child who is caught in a horrific situation. It's a father who's at his wit's end and who needs the very restoration, the very same restoration that his son needs. And before God gives him what he wants, before God gives this father what he wants, he gives this father what he needs. He gives this father what he needs, and that is belief in the power of the Son of God, belief in the resurrection and the life that will come, belief that Jesus can do what he says that he can do. Before Jesus gives us what we want, Jesus gives us what we need, and what he wants to give us is hope and peace and life and restoration. But we have to figure out that this is what we need. Not just something else to take away our pain for a few minutes or for a few hours. So when the Father brings the Son to Jesus, and I mean to Jesus and not just his disciples, he transforms this man's heart from unbelief to belief, from not believing to believing. When we bring our troubles and we bring our pain and we bring our hurt, not just to church and not just a small group, but to the foot of the cross, Jesus transforms our heart from unbelief to belief. When we bring all that we are struggling with and we lay it down and say, God, I don't know what to do. I don't have any more answers. We bring ourselves and all of our stuff to Jesus in that moment of desperation. Jesus begins working healing in our hearts. And as that healing happens inside of us, restoration begins to happen in all of those places in our lives. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't still be pain. That doesn't mean that there won't still be heartache, or that the bills will suddenly magically go away, or that your relationships will be immediately restored. There might be hard things that have to happen, but you'll know that God is working in you from the inside out to make all things new. And so this morning, I believe that there's some of us here who are rushing from one place to another with great hurts and great pains. There's some of us here this morning who are looking for relief and will do literally anything to find the healing that they're searching for. I want to tell you one more time that the place you need to go is to the cross. It's to the presence of a Father who loves you so much so that he would send his Son to redeem your soul and to restore your circumstances. So this morning, as the band comes back to the stage and we sing this last song, I want to encourage you to be in prayer. Because we all walk around with hurt, and we all walk around with pain, we all walk around with brokenness, and sometimes we face struggles that we think are too great for us to bear. But you're invited this morning to take some time to really bring it, maybe for the first time, to the foot of the cross in prayer. I also want to let you know this morning that as this song plays, that we're going to follow this. This has been mentioned already. We're going to be following this song with a meeting about LifeSpring. And I want to encourage you to stick around. But if you'd like to slip out, you are more than welcome to do that. But take some time this morning and think about where you've been bringing your pain and your heartache and your troubles. Have you been bringing it to a place where they can be healed and restored? Or have you just been accepting whatever comes your way?